Welcome to Changing the Game, where bold leaders, rule breakers, and trailblazers drop the playbook and share how they lead, win, and shake things up. Hello, everyone. Today, I am joined by Stephanie Joyce. Stephanie is a powerhouse sales leader and a Shift Group partner. She is the Assistant Vice President of SaaS Sales for Commvault, and I'm so excited to welcome her onto the show today to share her many leadership insights. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so excited to have you. As I mentioned, amazing sales leader. Been a great to work with you at Shift Group too. So I guess if you could just paint the picture for our listeners today, give us a little background on yourself. Like, what were you like growing up? Let's take it all the way back. Were you naturally competitive? What are some of your characteristics or maybe experiences that helped shape you?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, I think if I have one word that everyone would describe me as growing up would be bossy. So I guess it's no surprise that I kind of got to where I am. It was definitely, a very competitive youth, and I didn't necessarily do a lot of sports, but it was always going for big things. I remember when I was randomly in fourth grade, I went for president of the school group, and I was going up a bunch of fifth graders. And funny enough, I had a tagline. My maiden name is La Spada, and I came up with Kuna Matata, vote for La Spada, and actually won off of that. So it was, anyway, yeah, so fun little things of that, but definitely was always trying to overachieve, get there. And I've been extremely competitive with pretty much everything in my life, including like board games and stuff. And yeah, so it's always been kind of a calling for me.
I love that. I can relate to the board game competitiveness. I feel like a lot of board games went flying in my household growing up. But
Yeah.
Sounds like, natural born leader, it sounds like from an early age. That quote, what is it? Like, girls who are bossy are like just natural born leaders or something.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
I always knew I wanted to do something like this.
So then how did you end up? So walk us through your collegiate transition then. Natural born leader growing up, had those skills. What did you study in college? Did you always know that you wanted to be in business or sales? What was that like?
Okay, I had probably the most non-traditional start into sales I think that I've ever heard of anyone. So I was an art major and an art history major. And I actually had gone and done a year at Oxford. I was studying Roman art, and I came back from school. I was on a scholarship, and I basically ran out of scholarship money. I got it all the way to the end, and they were like, you have to graduate. You have to get out of here. So I waitressed my whole way through school and paid for it. And I graduated, I'm waitressing, and it was like the last table of the day. And this guy says to me, I was working in DC at the time. And this guy says, like, you'd be really good in sales. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Here's your check. Like, please tip me. And thanks so much. And he was like, no, like, you should call me. And here's my number. Give me a call. And I called, and I was just desperate for a job. It wasn't like I had a great network. And I should mention too, that I was considering going to graduate school, but I really just didn't have a way to pay my way through unless I got crazy loans again, which I didn't want. And so I said, heck, why not call him? And he's like, I really like your personality. Come interview for me. I probably did not prep very well for the interview, but I still showed up on time and got there. Sold him on the idea that I was just this extremely competitive person. And I, through waitressing, I equated that to sales. And it is a lot like it, right? You're trying to please the customer. You're trying to get your commission out of it, your tip. And they bought it, right? They took me on. It was a guy named Jim Lizon, and shout out Jim. But he believed in me at the time. He was my first VP. And yeah, it was just kind of success from there. I will say the first few months was really hard. It was at the time, I remember they kind of set me at a desk, and they were like, okay, you're going to make cold calls. I'm like, what's a cold call? It was kind of like trial by fire, but the greatest experience. I definitely had no idea what sales was. I didn't know what tech was. I was actually selling internet at the time. And I knew the internet existed, but I didn't know really anything else about it. And it was kind of great from there. It's definitely been a journey.
That's awesome. I think a theme that comes up on the show a lot is that you don't really know where your next opportunity is going to come from. I think it's really cool. You were waitressing and somebody saw the potential in you. And other guests on the show have mentioned that before too. They met someone in a job, had no idea what sales was, and then it ended up being the start of their career path.
I agree. I think if anything's out of it, and I always tell this to people, is like, I think everyone gets a lot of different opportunities available to them. It's just whether or not you're willing to walk through the door and try something different. So
yeah, just being able to try something new for sure.
Yeah,
try it out, see if it's for you.
Yes, for sure. You have to, you get the opportunities, you are the one who have to cling to it. So
yeah. You mentioned you sat down and had to make some cold calls and you were like, what's a cold call? That was a big transition. Yeah. Did you have any cold call hesitancy when you started, or did you just dive right in?
I was terrified. I remember it's interesting because I've never had a problem with public speaking, but I definitely remember being extremely nervous for a really long time too. And I would just be like shaking and sweating, trying to like muster up the energy, because there's nothing worse than the idea of stranger rejection. And, you owe it, you like build up this story in your head. And what I really came to grips with was the idea that I'd never see this person again if they rejected me. I would never have any other experience with them. So I said, why not? Right? Let's just do it and kind of rip the Band-Aid off. And I started then, and the one thing I always do now in my entire, hack your life, is I gamified it. And I'm always in competition and things. It's even like cleaning my house. I'm like, how fast can I clean, right? How fast can I clean this area? Because that's like, will get me excited to do something. And so then I started to gamify on my own efforts. There was no outreach tools at the time that I was using. I was using literally my Cisco phone and a Excel spreadsheet. And I was like, I had these, whitepages.com, right? And I'm trying to figure out what time frame. So I remember I'd get into the office probably between like 5:30, 6 a.m. And I would start cold calling at 6:37. I mean, I was vicious, right? And like, it was crazy. I do remember that. And I'll never forget getting like a CTO on the phone. I'm pretty sure I woke him up and I snagged him. Like, I got the first meeting, and that's all that mattered to me. It was just the idea of like, when could I find that little way in that would set me apart? So
that's insane. Cold calling at 6:30 a.m. away to call for a CTO and getting a meeting. Like,
that's crazy. I don't know how it would go well anymore, but I do see, we even see it, our best pickup times still when we look at our own simulations are typically actually in the afternoon, like a 4:30 on. It makes sense. People are kind of winding down from the day, and I'm still more of like an early bird, but I don't know how often I'd get a 6:30 pickup anymore. I think that's a bit much, but we'll see.
Yeah, I want to hear a story about that if you do, because I feel like that's wild.
It's intense, but hey, there's not many other people calling then, so why not?
Yeah, that's so true.
Gotta try.
So you mentioned you gamify. I love that option. I guess I'm blanking on a word, but I just love that you gamified to kind of overcome that hesitancy or that stranger rejection. How do you coach your team in the same way to kind of gamify it, or how do you teach them to overcome any hesitancy?
I think for the biggest thing for the team is I try my best to cold call with them when I have a break, when they're doing their demand days. But I think for me, you got to do it, right? And I always tell them I have like one tagline that I always say is like, you're giving yourself analysis paralysis. You're overthinking the situation. You've created this story in your head that if you do it, you're thinking all these things. It was actually by one of my previous leaders, John Marangos, but he had given me this thing. He's like, you're in analysis paralysis. You're creating this binding on yourself that you're not going to get anything done. The only way you can move forward is just get it done. Pick the phone, write the email, whatever you need to do. And so with the team now, what I'm very big on is like, just make the call, right? It's not gonna, if you don't do anything, it gets you 0 steps forward. But if you at least try something, it's going to get you in the right direction. And another thing I always say too is activity breeds revenue. So if you sit there and you do nothing all day long, and all you do is, study the playbook, but you never enact the playbook, then what did you do? You didn't make any money, right? But if at least you're trying the dials, and I think what's the statistics, right? It's like for every 200 pickups or 200 calls, you're going to get 1 to 4 pickups. And then out of that, you might get 1 meeting. Mm-hmm. If that 1 meeting equals your revenue, then the activity was all worth it. But if it was 0 dials, it didn't it was useless. So, and I would say as the last thing is cold calling is still not dead in my opinion. There's no way, like we have too many great stories that come out of it. It's tough. It's brutal. It is the hardest form of prospecting. I will not give anyone anything that says that it's not the hardest thing you can do, but the only way to get really good at something is to keep going over and over and over until it just becomes comfortable,
I love the cold calling is not dead. I had a guest on last week, Taylor Martino, who said the same thing. And she is very adamant about that. She mentioned like, if no one else is calling because everyone's saying cold calling is dead, like you're going to get your foot in the door sooner. So make the dials.
Agreed. And
Yeah.
I will say this too. It's funny. We just did this piece with our executives. We did some video interviews with all of our executives, and every single one of them said, I hate cold calls. I hate cold calls. And I agree. Who likes the cold call, right? I'm not going to ever say cold calling stinks in both being the user and the receiver. However, each one of them said, I hate cold calls, but let me tell you about a time that it worked. And if you are that one person that can get in the door when nobody else did, then that cold call was worth everything.
Exactly. Amen. So before we dive too much into what you're doing now at Commvault and your team, I want to hear a little bit more about your journey to your role as assistant vice president. How did you get there? What were some key moments in your career?
Yeah. So as I said, I started out as a inside sales rep. I was doing demand gen at the time. I then ended up getting my foot in the door to becoming a field AE a few years later. Then ended up moving to Florida to do that. Actually started in DC, went to Nashville, and then got into Florida for the field role. Ended up at Dell, and there I met a really great leader, Elliot Hujarski, and he ended up going to Commvault about, I want to say probably 4 or 5 years ago. And then a year or two after, he called me and he said, hey, I want to build this mid-market team called Velocity at Commvault. I want you to come and run it. And I was definitely, kind of going like, I don't know. I work at Dell. It's a great company, right? It's one of the most name brand companies out there. But I really believed in him and the leadership here at Commvault. So came over, and then that's how kind of the team formed from there. So we started out with about 10 different sales reps, and now we're up to about over 30. And this team is really impressive in what it's done. And the one thing I will say too is if anyone looks at the stock price of Commvault, you'll see that clearly things are going in the right direction. It's helpful always not only to have great leadership, but then also to have a really relevant product in the marketplace. And I think it's a critical time too to be in sales, especially in tech sales, where there's so many ups and downs, to work for a company that's not a nice to have, but a need to have. And when you have a product that's in demand and it's needed for an organization, plus everything else that falls in line, it's just kind of this great kismet that occurs. So that's how I ended up here, was following behind Elliot. And yeah, he's still my leader to this day over here. And I'm, very thankful for what he's built. And it's a great team. So.
Yeah. You mentioned a few different leaders too throughout your journey so far. How important is it to find a mentor or someone to connect with closely in the workplace? And did those relationships happen naturally for you? Were you seeking mentorship? What was that like?
Yeah, I would say it's funny off of this, because I remember one of the team members was asking me earlier some of my favorite sales books, and I will never, you're saying this and it makes me think of Sheryl Sandberg's and Lean In. And I can't remember what part of it, but she's very big on the idea that you need to ask somebody explicitly to be their mentor. And I will say that the times that I've asked people explicitly for them to be a mentor to me, it has not gone well. Right. And even, it's not to say that they necessarily said no. It just hasn't been a productive relationship in the way that you're expecting in your mind of this Hollywood mentorship that they're like, come with me. And, it's this big grand moment and stuff. It's not that at all. I think really the most productive mentorships that I've experienced personally are ones where it's been a natural symbiosis of coming together. And what I mean by that specifically too, and it's not always the same person. I know that there are people that find one person in a career that they will follow for 30 years, right? Or they're like, oh, this person was my mentor for X amount of time. And that's really amazing. That's great that you had this great connection with that one person. However, what I found is the most helpful for me is just like there are seasons of life, there are seasons of mentorship. Who I needed 10 years ago to help guide me and be a guidepost for me is not the same place I'm at today, obviously. So like, I remember when I was at Iron Mountain, I was always fighting for the number one position. And I was like, it was brutal. There was a amazing rep named Jill, and I would always reach out to her and ask her, like, what do I do here? What's in this situation? How do you conduct your schedule? What does your time management look like? Right. Like, it was just, I was asking her big things. And through the years, I realized at that point, like, that's a mentor to you. Right. And those are the same moments of, you don't have to have this formal one-on-one structure. You don't have to have this whole thing built up of like, this is my mentor. Right. It's just about finding somebody that is willing to give you some of their time and to guide you on things that aren't always exactly in the most professional aspect. As in, like, it could be of career challenges. It could be, how do I navigate this within my life? And it's definitely not a therapist, but it's also somebody that isn't directly tied to your, like your promotion, but wants the best for you. And I think that is like the perfect mentor for me. Is it doesn't, like, if you get better, they don't always have to get better, but they're personally invested because they care about you and they want to take that extra time to be there for you. So, and it doesn't have to be that way forever. Like I said, I think there's seasons of mentorship, and I know where I am going to be in 10 years, there are going to be other people around me helping lift me up and boost me, that I'm going to need their thought and mind more than where I'm at today.
Yeah, Stephanie, I completely agree. I think that authenticity and finding a mentor is really important. Otherwise, it feels a bit forced or unnatural. Yes. I'm with you there. I think you mentioned something about the book Lean In. So I feel like this is a good segue to a question I want to ask. Yeah. So Changing the Game, it was originally created to really encourage more women to seek sales opportunities. And so I'd like to know, just from your personal experience, why do you think in tech, they say the average split of men to women is about 70-30? So in your experience, I guess, why do you think not as many women are attracted to this space?
Yeah, one of the things I look at a lot is, I think it's a very tough profession, and it really can burn you out. Right. And I would say it's tough to not take things personally. And I think, it's just, you got to like always be evolving and ever changing. And I definitely believe in the fact that, like, it is male dominated, especially in tech, right? It's male dominated. And there's a lot of different ways that, I'm trying to think of like exactly what it is. It's just a lot of different ways that, like, women, I feel like, lean more into things where it's not as cutthroat. And it kind of hurts me to see that as well, because I want to see more women in that. I would say too, is like, it's very, how am I going to say? It's definitely something that you can get wrapped into, and you have to be able to like create good judgment out of it, and it can take your heart with it. So yeah, one of the biggest things I would love to see more is that women have like the grit and determination to make it through. Don't get troubled by the idea that it's a male dominated industry. And there is definitely space for everyone here. So.
Yeah. And I think men and women can sometimes have different strengths. It doesn't mean one's better or worse than the other. It's just a different strength. And I guess what do you think women can continue to do to level up their sales success?
Yeah. I would definitely say is, one, definitely find mentorship, right? In terms of like getting through those different pieces. The other thing I would say too, is that when you're getting into it, is you got to just continue to keep your eye on the ball, right? I see too a lot of times where, if we have different avenues that are open, and if you hit adversity, it's easier to go into a more woman dominated field of other pieces, like, different avenues like marketing, where we would probably see more, or HR, for example, where it's more women dominated. And instead of hitting adversity and kind of deflecting into, if they don't, they feel like maybe I need to go to a more woman dominated field, is to just continue that grit and to keep pushing forward. That is really what I would I see more than anything else is there's space for everyone here, but we also have to create our own space in that, right? And you have to be able that when the going gets tough is to push through and realize like you earned your right to be here. You absolutely have an ability and a need to be here. And that it's so easy to get dismayed and then just to try something else. I mean, I even remember it was early on in my career, and this was just purely, I mean, this is probably the first year, and I probably had a bad quarter. And I remember saying to my husband, I was like, man, should I just go and be a teacher, be something else, do something else that just doesn't take so much out of you and so much of the emotion and everything. And I was getting, really involved and invested. And I am so glad, obviously, I didn't. I think this is definitely where I was meant to be, but don't get dismayed by it, right? And I'll remember at the time too, I'd go to conferences and I would be like one of 5 women in the room. Mm-hmm. And you definitely get that feeling of like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Do I have why would I want to be here when it's so male dominated? But use it as your superpower. Realize that it's a unique moment for you to take advantage and set a mark where so many others have maybe not done that, right? And it creates a pioneer moment to take advantage.
So. Yeah. Pioneer moment. Seriously. It's like you're paving the way for others. Maybe you're one of 5 in the room, but one of those 5 maybe sees you and realizes, hey, there is space in this room.
For sure.
Yeah. You mentioned grit a lot too. So you're building a sales team currently. So I'd just like to know how you identify that grit in candidates and how do you continue to foster that culture?
Yeah. Oh man, grit is so tough. It's something that you got to have inside of you. And it's so much built in the foundation, I think, of when you're growing up in your life, right? And there's always, I think, different moments for people of when they had to find the grit inside of them. And it typically comes when you're down in the dumps and everything is working against you. It feels like the world is out to get you. And it's like, it's the fight or flight. Are you going to take the moment and kind of face it forward? Or are you going to run away and go do something else? As I said, I even had that in that moment of my first early year in sales. But in that regard, I'm looking for and what other leaders that I'm with look forward is that we're trying to find people that have that ability to persevere. They're going to have some type of a story. They're going to have some moment where they, are able to explain it. And we'll also do that through challenging questions of asking them to explain exactly what was a part of their story. What was something where they hit a wall and how were they able to overcome it? And it tells you a lot about a person when you're talking with them, what that looks like, right? And look, I mean, I think all of us in an ideal world, we would love the idea of an easy life, right? But if you don't have the tough moments, then you don't really know what easy feels like. And I'm very thankful for the tough moments that I've had in my life because it really has turned me into a gritty person in that way. And, and so I would say like, embrace those moments too. It don't be, shell shocked or scared or whatever, when you hit the wall or what it feels like is the wall. I always think it's just, not to be cliche, but it's that breakthrough moment that you can charge forward and really make something out of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I look back on some of those moments just in my career where things were really, really tough. And I've had those moments too of like, is this for me? Is this meant for me? And then once you push through, I think it's easy to look back, but now I see, hey, this definitely made me stronger, tougher, smarter. So
yeah, for sure. It's got to be something that it's, you'll have probably a lot of low valleys in your life, but you're going to also have some really high peaks, and getting to those high peaks is the ultimate goal. So I think every single thing has got to teach you a lesson in the end, even if the lesson is extremely painful while you're going through it. Right. And it's like, it's funny, either in your personal life or in your professional life, whatever it is, if it feels like a really dark moment, which I think we all have those really dark moments, the thing that I've learned to do, that's something, being later in my years now, is like, I keep thinking like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I can't see it yet. I'm around the bend, I'm behind, whatever it is, but it's reaching out there. And I just like, the only way to get there is to literally keep marching forward.
Yes, Stephanie, I definitely I've loved this conversation so far. I can tell that you're someone who has the grit. you've earned your stripes and you've gone through it, going through, being an individual contributor, now to leading teams. I'd like to know, like, in your experience, what advice would you give to individuals who one day have those aspirations of becoming a leader, whether it's in sales or other avenues?
Yeah. I would say number one thing for me is, it's the first thing that's coming to my mind. So that's what I'm going to say is follow through. It's funny because so many people have reached out to me before on LinkedIn or wherever it is, on email, and they're like, hey, I want to get into this. Hey, will you have a conversation with me? And that's great. I mean, I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody in regards to learning about what's working for you. Even people are like, could you look at my resume and see if this is something that would catch your eye? Anything like that. Like, as in, I love being able to kind of give back or pay it forward, what you will. But the one thing I will say is, it's like, follow through is so lacking in every part of our society. And that really stinks. And what I mean specifically about it, and this is also like the mark of the greatest sales rep, right? I'll say my last cliche that I tell my team all the time: squeaky wheel gets the oil. And like, if you are not being a squeaky wheel on someone to try to work your way in, like, slowly chipping away the block to get in, then you're not relevant. You're not staying on top of it. And for me, one of my biggest things is that if you have somebody either that, like, say they're watching this, or if they're listening to it later, and there's somebody in their life that has previously offered time, but it kind of has dwindled or fizzled or whatever, is go back and keep knocking on the door, right? Knock onto the door until they say, you know what, it's really rude of you, stop knocking on my door. And it's doubtful that's going to happen. But if you have a relevant opportunity in a conversation that there's a chance that you can keep knocking down on it, then that's what I would say you got to do. And for me, it's, I think you got to treat that in the same way of climbing up the ladder. If you really want to climb up the ladder, or if you really want a job in tech sales or whatever it is, it's easy to blast out a lot of effort in a minimal amount of time. And then you're like, oh, it didn't work. I tried for a week. Well, you tried for a week, right? If you try for 5 years, then talk to me and then say, like, you know what, I really don't know if you have the right opportunity, or maybe you're attacking it wrong. But there's no way that if you just don't do some strategic effort over and over again, it's not going to pay dividends for you in the long run. For me personally, it's like, I think about it. I had a friend, Stacy, and she made manager by the age of 28. And I remember being a little younger at the time, and I was like, I need to do it by 27. Like, I have to get there, right? And I was very vocal in the company of being like, I want to be in leadership, put me in opportunities. Like, I want to be there. And I didn't make leader until I was 30. And for me, I felt it was like such a detractor. But then I was like, wait a second, I made, a leadership position at 30. I need to give myself some kudos there, because I did that. And now obviously I'm still like, I want to continue to climb up, and you got to make people aware. So it's not just saying one thing to my leader and be like, hey, just one day I want to let you know, I want to be, I want to be you one day. I want to be a CRO, whatever those things are. That's great. But if you only mention it one time, then it is what it is. But kind of like how I nag my husband, if I tell him one time, something probably won't get done. But if I'm like, hey, did you do that? Hey, did you do that? It's maybe a little too annoying, but you got to constantly be like chirping away to let people know, because it's easy to forget, right? We're all busy in our own heads and so distracted. And I tell my team constantly, like, they'll kind of be like, I'm so sorry, whatever. And if I forgot, I'm like, no, remind me, right? Because it's, you can get so overwhelmed, so distracted, and someone's got to, if you're not like advocating for yourself, you're not putting on your own mask first before you put it on others, then you're missing the opportunity to really bring yourself forward. It's you'll definitely get left in the dust, unfortunately.
Yes, I 100% agree. I can't even think of the word I'm looking for right now. I was just so zoned in on what you were saying.
You got to advocate, right?
Advocate for yourself. Yeah. Thank you. I was like, what is that word? Advocate. Have to advocate for yourself. Everyone's trying to pull for your attention. So nothing wrong with following through, following up over and over again.
You have to. And it's tough. And I know, like, there's people that have reached out and they said, like, hey, I want to have an opportunity. Like, yes, but if you're not going at it, like, I have a golden rule for interviewing, which is, if they don't send me a follow-up email after the interview, we're not going to continue forward. And that's so interesting, because you think, follow-up interview or follow-up email after an interview, like, of course it's going to happen, right? And you would be shocked by how many people do not do that. shocked. And it's such a sad thing to me where it's like follow through is just the idea of making sure that you stay relevant, doing what you say you're going to do. And if you can't even do the basics of that, then at that point, you're wasting your time by even doing the initial reach out. So
yeah, the amount of times we have to say that to candidates here at Shift Group, never forget the follow-up. So I'm going to clip that part of this episode and just keep posting it on LinkedIn. Like, yes. follow up after the interviews. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. I have just one final thought question for you. I know it's a lot of advice questions, but since the show was originally started to encourage more women to go after a sales role, what advice would you offer to women and just honestly, really anyone who is considering a career in sales?
Okay, so if you're not in sales today, you have to start by trying to get into sales, right? And unfortunately, sales is one of those, it is more about what you've done versus what you've studied. So even if you're like me as an art major, or maybe you even got your master's in business, you're probably going to still have to start from the ground up. And what that really means is like, it's one of those ugly starter roles. It's being an SDR, being a BDR, and no shade, by the way, to any of those roles. It just is, it's at the bottom, right? It's the bottom of the sales spectrum. And then from there, you got to earn your stripes and climb up. And sales is such a black and white culture. You either made your number or you didn't. So it's pretty easy to say, did I do it or did I not? And then you need to get to your number and climb from there and continue to advocate for yourself and try to go get those bigger roles. So what I would say too is if you're stuck where you're at and you feel like I'm not getting where I need to go, maybe you're an SDR or a BDR or you're an AE and you're just not getting the flow up that you want. Maybe you're not getting the leadership position. Maybe you're not getting, you're there and you're not able to get the AE position, is don't be afraid to jump, right? There is a lot of great studies that you could read out there talking about how much you're able to maximize your knowledge, your skill set, and most importantly, your pay to be able to go and flow into new opportunities. And there are tech companies are hiring constantly in order to do that. And the last thing I would say too is be flexible. The one thing is oftentimes we're looking, it has to be it's the silly Goldilocks story. It has to be the right bed and the right size and all these things. And it's never going to work out exactly how you want it. It's never going to be the exact opportunity you're looking for. So try to find something that's pretty close of what you're looking for and then go for it, right? Whether it's a commute that you don't want, that's a little too long, or maybe the pay isn't perfect, you got to start somewhere and you got to be willing to make accommodations. If not, then you might be sat there waiting forever if you're waiting for the perfect opportunity. I don't really believe they exist, to be honest. But yeah, that's what I would say is you got to take the leap of faith. And all else fails is reach out to somebody and be the squeaky wheel and make sure that you get that. It's funny because even I do it today, and not necessarily just in selling, but there's other great sales leaders out there that I've reached out to. And I'm always trying to do a mind share with them of how can we be better? What are they doing that I'm not doing? And I've done it myself, cold outreaches. And I'll never forget Benjamin Pittman, who he is kind of one of the strongest voices on LinkedIn. But I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I'm in, this is at the beginning of Commvault. And I was like, I'm in this new role. I'm looking for some kind of expertise in SaaS. Do you have a few minutes? And it's funny, I'll never forget. He was like, I don't normally take a lot of these, but your LinkedIn message was kind of sad and compelling. And I felt like I had to talk to you, right? So thanks, Ben, for taking my call. But it was just one of those things is you can't, when you get comfortable in a role, don't be comfortable. You got to keep advocating and you got to keep reaching out and doing all those things and networking, especially last thing I'll say, sorry, is in a remote virtual world that we are so stuck in. If COVID taught us anything is that you don't have to be in the workplace to advocate and network for yourself. So LinkedIn is a beautiful thing. I'd say more oftentimes than not, if you reach out to somebody just for a quick mind share with a specific agenda, what you're looking for, then that is where you have an opportunity to really reach out. Don't just say I've gotten messages before that I'd be like, oh, I'd like to connect with you. Well, about what, right? And are you looking for mentorship of how to get into sales or how to get into leadership as a woman, whatever it is, all those things are really relevant. Advocate, be specific, and never stop trying on that. So
I think that's great advice, Stephanie, especially, I mean, so many wonderful things, but the be specific part at the end, so true. When you're advocating for yourself, let them know what you're looking for.
Exactly. You have to let people know, because if not, if you're too general, they just think that you want to be friends with them. And not to say that we don't all have enough friends, but like LinkedIn's not there to, it's not a matchmaker of friendships, right? It's a matchmaker of opportunity.
Yes. Awesome. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. This was seriously awesome. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. You can always catch it, the replay, or on our YouTube afterwards. And I will see you guys next week. But Stephanie, can I encourage anyone listening to connect with you on LinkedIn?
Sure. Amen.
Awesome. I love it. And make sure you if you connect with Stephanie, send an agenda, be specific. Don't just say you want to be friends.
Exactly. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys. See you next week.